Christmas dinner was almost over. My family sat around the long wooden table, the same table I built with my own hands 30 years ago. My son raised his glass and smiled. Everyone was laughing. But then I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear. My son leaned toward his wife and whispered quietly, "After this Christmas, the farm will finally be ours." I didn't say anything. I just smiled, because that night I decided to change the will. My name is Daniel Whitmore. I'm 63 years old, and the Whitmore farm has been part of my life longer than almost anything else. My father bought this land in 1968. Back then it was nothing more than an empty field with a broken fence and a small wooden barn that leaned slightly to one side. Most people thought he was crazy for buying it, but my father believed something simple. Land doesn't betray you, he used to say. If you work it long enough, it gives something back. I grew up on that farm. I learned how to fix tractors before I learned how to drive a car. I learned how to wake up before sunrise and how to fall asleep exhausted after sunset. The farm wasn't just property, it was history. When my father died, he left it to me, not because I was the oldest, because I was the one who stayed. My younger brother moved to the city years earlier. He preferred offices and suits. I preferred dirt on my boots, so the farm became my responsibility. Over the years, I slowly improved it: new fences, better equipment, a renovated house. By the time I turned 50, the farm had grown into something valuable, very valuable. The nearby town expanded, developers began buying land. What had once been quiet countryside slowly became prime real estate. People started making offers, big ones. But I always said no. The farm wasn't for sale, at least, that's what I believed. My son, Ryan, saw things differently. Ryan grew up on the farm too, but he never loved it the way I did. To him, the land was money, opportunity. He moved to the city after college and rarely came back except for holidays. But whenever he did visit, the same conversation eventually appeared. "You know this land is worth millions now, Dad." He said it casually, like he was reminding me of something obvious. "I know," I would answer. "You could retire tomorrow." "I'm not in a hurry." Ryan would shake his head and laugh. "You always say that." For years I ignored the pressure, because I believed something about my son. I believed that deep down, he respected the farm even if he didn't understand it. But that Christmas evening changed everything. The house was warm. The smell of roasted turkey filled the kitchen. Snow covered the fields outside the windows. Ryan and his wife were visiting for the holidays. We sat around the big wooden table, drinking wine and telling old stories. It felt like a normal Christmas, until I stood up to refill my coffee. As I walked past the hallway near the kitchen, I heard voices. Ryan's voice, soft, quiet. He didn't know I was there. "After this Christmas," he whispered to his wife, "the farm will finally be ours." She laughed softly. "Your dad is never selling." "He won't have to," Ryan said. There was a pause, then he added something that made my stomach tighten. "He's already getting older. It's just a matter of time." For a moment I stood there in the hallway, completely still, not angry, not shocked, just awake, because suddenly everything made sense. The constant questions about the land, the sudden interest in my health, the polite visits that always ended with discussions about property values. Ryan wasn't waiting to inherit the farm, he was waiting for me to disappear. I returned to the table quietly. Ryan looked up and smiled. "Dad, you all right?" I smiled back, "Of course." But that night, after everyone went to sleep, I sat alone in the kitchen for a long time, and I thought about what I had heard. Then I picked up the phone, and called my lawyer. 3 weeks later, I met with my lawyer, Harold Benson, in his small office downtown. Harold had known my family for years. He handled my father's will when he passed away, so when I told him I wanted to update mine, he didn't seem surprised. What changed? He asked calmly. I leaned back in the chair and looked out the window. My son thinks the farm already belongs to him. Harold raised an eyebrow. And does it? Not anymore. He opened a folder. Tell me what you want to do. For a long moment, I thought about my father, about the years we spent repairing fences, planting crops, watching the same sunset over the same fields. The farm deserved someone who respected it, someone who understood what it meant. My son won't get the farm, I said. Harold nodded slowly. Then who will? I smiled slightly. Someone who actually loves it. There was a young man named Jacob who had worked on the farm for nearly 10 years. He wasn't family, but he treated the land like it mattered. He repaired equipment without being asked, he showed up early, he stayed late, and he never once talked about selling the place. So Harold rewrote the will. The farm would go to Jacob, not immediately, but when I was gone, Ryan would still receive money from my savings, enough to live comfortably, but the land would stay with someone who valued it. 6 months later, Ryan visited again. We sat on the porch. Watching the sunset, he looked out across the fields. You ever think about selling? He asked again. I smiled. Sometimes. He nodded. Well, whenever the time comes. I'll take good care of it. I looked at him for a moment, then back at the fields. I'm sure you will, I said quietly, but by then, the future of the farm had already changed. Ryan just didn't know it yet, and sometimes, the most important decisions in a family happen long before anyone realizes the story has changed.